Hey, good Sunday morning, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. It's about 10:45 here. We'll be getting another track update on Irma in any minute now, but really the track is not going to change that much. The track is pretty much set now for the next 3 to 4 days, and the impacts are already being felt. So let's get right to what's going on right now. Florida's getting hammered with a Cat 4, Cat 3 type storm. Southwest Florida, obviously, bearing the brunt of this, but really the entire state is going to feel a hurricane. The entire peninsula, the lower peninsula, except for the Panhandle, is under a hurricane warning. Pretty much the entire state, which is rare to see. We had a landfall as a Category 4 in the Keys this morning. We're going to get a secondary landfall up here. It looks like somewhere around Naples, Fort Myers area, Port Charlotte, somewhere in here. It probably doesn't really matter where the exact center comes ashore, but you get a pretty good idea on where this is going to move in. So let me put on the track. Let me take off that for a second and put the cone on, if I can get it to pop up here. And I'll actually show you the forecast track as it moves up through parts of Florida and then moves into Georgia, which is going to get some pretty significant impacts as well. Let's see, there we go. Pop it back out. So that's the that's the track, or the cone. And you can see the circulation is going to kind of hover off the coast here, kind of clip the west coast of Florida, then move up through the Panhandle, through Georgia, Alabama, and then into Tennessee. Areas all in here, though, are going to get clobbered with really strong winds and possibly some flash flooding. There's already tropical storm warnings well inland, like you just don't normally see that. And for the Charlotte area, this track further west starts pulling the strongest winds back a little bit, but they're going to be really close. I think this is kind of the area that's going to see the strongest weather. So we're on a borderline. I think for the most part we'll be okay as it moves up our way, but we're certainly still going to have some rain and wind. A lot of folks, this is not going to be an all clear. It is going to rain and it's going to be windy. It's just a matter of how much rain and wind. But poor Florida, I mean, it is really bad down there right now. Let me show you the steering currents, because the upper low we talked about for days is sitting right there. It's starting to pull the system north. It'll wrap it back to the northwest. You can actually see the flow getting pulled up to the north. All these high clouds starting to move into the Carolinas already. That's the outer flow, the outflow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, at least, moving in. So the forecast track is pretty straightforward here. This is the only place it can go right now. Up here, these tracks are a little bit more questionable, but right here, that's where it's going. High pressure to the east, low pressure here. It can't go further west. It really can't go further east right now. It's got to go pretty much due north, give or take 50 or 60 miles, which is right on the coastline. I've been watching the coverage out of Fort Myers right now. I'll bring it up briefly here and you could hear it. They're talking about they're getting that offshore wind right now, which is kind of interesting. You saw that video out of the Bahamas yesterday. Because the flow of water or air is going this way, it's pushing the water out to sea right now. And so in Sanibel Island and some other locations there in South Florida, they're getting that same effect as well. And if you saw that video, a lot of people, if you haven't seen that before, that happens quite often, believe it or not. In the Pamlico Sound and the Outer Banks, that happened with Irene and Isabel. When the winds change direction, the water comes rushing back. But when the wind is blowing like this, it actually pushes the water out to sea. It's like the reverse of a storm surge. And if it's low tide, that water can go really far out. The problem is then it comes rushing back in as the winds shift or the winds die down, because the water wants to go back to where it came from. So let me talk a little bit about what's going to happen here locally as this moves to the north. I'm going to show you some of the images I have on my Facebook page right now. So these are the impacts for the Charlotte area and the timing. This includes most of the Western Carolinas, the WCNC viewing area. I'll talk more about outside of my viewing area here in a minute. But heavy rain potential, 1 to 4 inches, some localized flooding. Still think we're going to see that. Main winds 15 to 30, maybe 35 sustained for brief periods of time, but there will be gusts of 40. And because it's going to last for 6, 7, 8 hours in some locations, that could still bring down some trees and power lines. But you notice I have the winds, the tree damage, and tornado threat back down in the low range, and the heavy rain threat kind of in the medium, because I still think there could be some localized flooding. But remember, even though the individual threats are low, the combination of this and this could lead to this. And obviously, if we get any of these, all of these really don't matter. So that's just the kind of the localized impact and timing starting tomorrow. Now you'll start feeling this today. We've got high clouds and wind, but we are going to see the rain and wind really pick up tomorrow by the time you wake up. Here's a look at our futurecast wind speeds, just to give you a rough estimate of some of the peak wind gusts, and this is 10 p.m. tomorrow night, so it looks like tomorrow night will be the peak for us. And you can see there's a band that comes up here with winds over 40 miles an hour, but look at some of the higher gusts back into the mountains. I certainly think that'll be the area where we see the biggest impacts back into the North Carolina mountains, but you can see that northeast wind is really going to be blowing tomorrow, especially late in the day. So impacts overall, notice the wind and rain threat, I kind of have them right in the medium range for us. But the tornado threat is low. Something I'll keep an eye on, and power outage is low. The one caveat is outside of my viewing area is right here. The closer you get to the Georgia border, the threats start to ramp up because the winds will be stronger, and they'll definitely have some damage there. And just to show you that area, you could see for the first time that they started issuing these inland warnings, there's a tropical storm warning for Atlanta. So this could have been us. 2 days ago, we thought we would be in the core of this over here, but because the track went from this to basically this, it's shifted everything back in this direction. So now northern Georgia is the area that's going to be impacted. So tropical storm warnings up for Georgia and parts of Alabama. And look at the hurricane warning. I mean, almost the entire state of Florida, except for the western panhandle, is under some kind of watch or advisory for a hurricane. So let's talk about what's going to happen here locally. I'll widen this out a little bit. First thing, I'll show you the radar. You could see this very well-defined storm. Notice the interaction with the front and the trough, how the rain is spreading out in the northeast. So look, the low is here. Remember, the track is only here. That's the center. I talked about this yesterday. People focus way, way too much on the track of the center. All this weather going out here is still going to impact us. That stuff isn't going away. In fact, if you want to be missed by a hurricane, you want it to go to your east, because the cutoff on the west side is much sharper. Up here, there's weather for days east of the center. So you want to be west if you want to miss out completely on the weather. So here's a look at the short range NAM. This is going to go through tonight. We'll start going into tomorrow morning, and we'll start to see some of those probably light rain start to spread in tomorrow morning. Maybe, I'm thinking more like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, the light rain moves in. And again, this rain will probably be pretty persistent. It won't be heavy. It'll be persistent. We're okay with that rain. What we got to watch for is these bands here. If they start pivoting up our way, then we're going to have some flash flooding issues and probably some gustier winds. And that's the thing to remember too. The heavier the rain, the windier it's going to get, because those winds will be off the surface with tropical systems, and they can work their way down to the ground. Now, here's what I'm worried about tomorrow. You're like, oh, good, we don't get rain here. But if we get any breaks in the clouds and the sun comes out, then the tornado threat goes up. And so that's something that would not be a good thing for us. You can see the rain bands moving back in tomorrow evening. This is when the heaviest weather moves in tomorrow night into early Tuesday. Look at these rain bands setting up, coming up through the upstate of South Carolina. And again, this would be a tornado threat in here tomorrow. You could see these bands setting up here, strong winds, and probably tornadoes in there. And just to show you some of the wind speeds in there, see if I can get the winds to pop up with the model. Doesn't seem to want to, but we'll put the radar on. There will be enhanced wind or gust within those rain bands as they come up from the south. So this is tomorrow night about midnight. So this would be some pretty nasty weather. Very strong winds, maybe some trees coming down, and isolated tornadoes in here. We could be under a tornado watch at some point as that band comes up from the south and east. So that would be the biggest concern for me right now, would be tornadoes and some of those heavier rain bands setting up. But overall, this is something we're going to be able to handle. I don't think it's going to be something too out of control for the Carolinas. Just be ready. Possible power outages. Plan for like a severe weather day is basically what you should be doing. You don't need to buy bottled water. Don't go crazy with supplies. Just, plug everything in, charge everything up, have a way to get warnings and alerts as the system moves in tomorrow night, because that will be the peak of the storm. So let's go back and show you what's going on right now. You can see the track. We'll keep an eye on Jose. It's going to be out there for about 5 days. I'm not overly concerned yet. But just to show you that we've already got some strong winds moving in here, let me turn the wind gust on. See if we can get the current wind gust to come on. So even here in the Carolinas, you can see these are the current wind gusts. We're already getting some gusts around 20 to 25 miles per hour. And look how far north and east of the center these wind gusts extend. Down in Florida, obviously, huge wind gusts being reported right now, and it's just going to get worse. Some of the stations aren't even reporting. They probably are down. Let me see. That's yeah. I'm trying to display all of them, but looks like a lot of are out of commission because that's not very many showing up. But you see the wind gust already across our area. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'm going to be on tonight at 6 and 11. And of course, Owl continues to post updates. Think about all our friends down in Florida, the tornado, the surge, the wind. It's full on hurricane for Florida. For us, it's going to be a miserable Monday, Tuesday, but we'll get through this and we'll be fine. I'll have another update coming up tonight at 6 o'clock.